They held the firebase for 2 days with zero ammunition, and the enemy never knew. Vietnam, 1969. Firebase Delta, a small outpost in the Central Highlands. 50 American soldiers, surrounded by jungle, surrounded by enemy forces, and after 3 days of siege, they ran out of bullets. Every rifle, empty. Every machine gun, silent. Every grenade, thrown. The North Vietnamese army had them pinned down, outnumbered 10-1, maybe 20-1. Standard procedure said, call for extraction, abandon the position, live to fight another day. But Lieutenant Marcus Webb looked at his men, looked at the firebase, looked at the enemy positions in the tree line, and he made a decision that would define the next 48 hours. We're not leaving, he said, and they're not finding out we're out of ammo. This is the story of the greatest bluff in military history, the firebase that became a house of cards, and the 50 men who bet their lives that the enemy would blink first. Firebase Delta wasn't supposed to be important. It was a forward observation post, a radio relay station, a place to watch enemy movements and report back. 60 men rotated through on 2-week shifts, boring duty, guard towers, sandbags, listening to the jungle at night. Lieutenant Marcus Webb arrived on November 3, 1969, with his platoon. 42 men, fresh from a month of patrol. 2 weeks, Webb told his men. Then we rotate out. Keep your heads down, stay alert, and we'll be fine. On November 5th, the NVA hit them. It started with mortars, dozens of them, raining down on the firebase like hail. Webb ran to the command bunker, grabbed the radio. Any station, this is Delta Actual. We are under attack. Request immediate support. The response came back through static. Delta Actual, all air assets engaged. Ground support unavailable. Hold your position. Copy, Webb said. We'll hold. The mortars stopped. Infantry assault began. NVA soldiers poured out of the tree line, hundreds of them, maybe more. Webb's men opened fire, M16s, M60 machine guns, Claymore mines detonating. The firebase turned into a kill zone. The first assault lasted 20 minutes. The NVA pulled back. Left their dead in the wire. Webb counted bodies. At least 50 enemy KIA. Good shooting, he told his men. But he looked at the tree line, saw movement. More soldiers, many more. This wasn't a probe. This was a siege. The attacks came in waves. Every 2 hours, the NVA would hit them. Mortars first, then infantry, then pull back before American air support could arrive. It was textbook siege warfare. Wear them down, drain their ammunition, wait for them to break. By nightfall on day 1, Webb's ammunition situation was bad. He called his squad leaders together. Status report. How much ammo do we have left? Sergeant Mike Halloway, 1st Squad. Maybe 500 rounds for the M60s, couple hundred for the rifles. Sergeant Dave Chen, 2nd Squad. We're running low on grenades, down to our last case of claymores. Corporal Tim Rodriguez, 3rd Squad. We've got 12 mortar rounds left. That's it. Webb did the math in his head. At their current burn rate, they had maybe 12 hours of ammunition left. All right, Webb said. New rules. Controlled bursts only. No full auto unless they're inside the wire. Make every shot count. What about resupply? Mike asked. I've been asking for 3 hours, Webb said. They say helicopters can't get in. Too hot. So we're on our own. Yeah. The attacks continued through the night. Smaller now. Probing. Testing. Webb's men fired back. Carefully. Precisely. By dawn on day 2, ammunition was critical. 100 rounds for the M60s. Maybe 50 rounds per rifle. 4 grenades. 2 mortar rounds. Webb stood on the firebase wall. watched the sunrise, saw NVA soldiers moving in the tree line. They knew. They had to know. One more assault, maybe two, and Firebase Delta would be overrun. Webb keyed his radio. Any station, this is Delta Actual. We are critically low on ammunition. Request immediate resupply or extraction. Static. Then, Delta Actual, negative on both. Weather is closing in, no flights until tomorrow at earliest. Tomorrow, 24 hours away. Webb looked at his ammunition count again. They had maybe 2 hours of fighting left, not 24. 2. Lieutenant? Sergeant Holloway walked up. What do we do? Webb stared at the tree line, at the enemy soldiers watching them. An idea formed. Crazy, desperate, probably suicidal, but maybe, just maybe, it could work. Mike, Webb said slowly, how good of a liar are you? Webb gathered his squad leaders in the command bunker. Here's the situation, he said. We have maybe 2 hours of ammo left. The NVA probably knows we're low. One more assault, and we're done. So we call for extraction, Dave said. Can't. Weather's too bad. Choppers can't fly. Then what? Webb looked at each of them. We bluff. Silence. Bluff? Mike said. What does that mean? It means we make them think we still have ammunition. Lots of it. Enough that attacking us would be suicide. Tim laughed, not a happy sound. That's insane. You got a better idea? No one did. All right, Webb said. Here's how it's going to work. We stop shooting. Completely. We make them think we're conserving ammo because we have so much we don't need to waste it. They'll attack, Dave said. Maybe, Webb said. But if we do this right, they'll hesitate. And hesitation buys us time. Time for what? Mike asked. Time for the weather to clear. Time for resupply. Time for something to change. Webb pulled out a map. We're going to run a deception operation. Fake radio traffic. Make them think reinforcements are coming. Set up dummy positions with empty rifles. Anything to make them believe we're stronger than we are. And if they call our bluff? Tim asked. Webb met his eyes. Then we fight with what we have left, and we make it count. The three sergeants looked at each other. Finally, Mike nodded. All right, LT, we're in. Good, Webb said, because we start now. 900 hours. Day 2, the NVA launched another assault. Mortars first, then infantry. 200 soldiers, charging the wire. Webb watched them come. His men crouched behind sandbags, weapons ready. Hold fire, Webb said over the radio. Say again? Mike's voice, confused. Hold fire. Do not engage. The NVA got closer. 100 yards. 75. Lieutenant, they're going to be in the wire, Dave yelled. I know, hold fire. 50 yards. Webb's heart was hammering. His men were looking at him like he'd lost his mind. 40 yards. Then Webb keyed the radio. Spoke loudly, clearly. In a voice the NVA could probably hear if they were listening to captured American frequencies. All stations Delta Actual. We have hostile infantry at 40 yards. Permission to engage with heavy weapons? He paused, pretended to listen to a response. Roger, holding fire, waiting for them to close to 30 yards for maximum effect. 35 yards. The NVA started slowing down, confused. Why wasn't anyone shooting? Alpha Team, Webb said into the radio. Prepare Claymore mines. Bravo Team, stand by on the M60s. Charlie Team, mortars ready on my mark. All lies. They had no Claymores left. The M60s had maybe 20 rounds each. The mortars were empty. But the NVA didn't know that. 30 yards. The enemy soldiers were looking at each other, hesitating. Then one of Webb's men, PFC Danny Kim, stood up, aimed his empty rifle at the enemy. and screamed, "Come on!" The bluff broke, just for a second. But it was enough. The NVA infantry stopped, looked at Danny, at the firebase, at the silent guns, and then they retreated, not running, just backing up, carefully, like they were walking away from a bomb. Webb exhaled, didn't realize he'd been holding his breath. "Did that just work?" Mike whispered over the radio. "Yeah," Webb said. "It worked." Jesus Christ. "Get everyone ready," Webb said, "because we're going to have to do that about 20 more times." 400 hours. Day 2. Webb was on the radio, speaking to no one, but the NVA didn't know that. "Bulldog 6, this is Delta Actual, confirming your ETA. You're inbound with 2 companies? Outstanding. We'll mark the LZ with smoke." He clicked off, turned to Mike. "Find me something that makes smoke. Lots of smoke. We don't have smoke grenades left. Then improvise." 20 minutes later, thick black smoke was pouring from 3 locations inside the firebase. Oil, burning tires, wet wood. It looked like signal smoke. It looked like they were marking landing zones. Webb grabbed binoculars, watched the tree line. NVA soldiers were watching the smoke, pointing, talking. "They're buying it," Dave said next to him. "For now." At 1500 hours, Webb staged a fake helicopter landing. No helicopter was coming. The weather was still too bad, but Webb had his men run around the LZ like they were unloading supplies, shouting, pointing, acting. "Move it! Move it! Get those ammo crates to the bunkers! 2nd platoon, form up on the east wall. Mortar team, new firing coordinates." All theater, all fake. But from a distance, through jungle and smoke, it looked real. One of Webb's men, Specialist Greg Foster, ran up with an empty wooden crate. "LT, this is insane." "I know. It's actually working." "I know that too. What happens when they figure it out?" Webb looked at him. "Then we hope we've bought enough time." As darkness fell, Webb implemented Phase 3. "We're going to set up dummy positions," he told his men. "Rifles in sandbag positions, helmets on sticks. Make it look like we have 3 times as many men as we actually do." "Why?" Tim asked. "Because at night, they can't tell the difference between a real soldier and a helmet on a stick. They'll see our positions, see our numbers, and think twice about attacking." They worked through the night, setting up fake fighting positions, empty rifles propped up, helmets on broomsticks, ponchos draped to look like sleeping soldiers. By dawn on day 3, Firebase Delta looked like it was manned by 200 men. It wasn't. There were still only 50, but the NVA didn't know that. 0600 hours. Day 3. The enemy launched their largest assault yet. Mortars, rockets, then a full infantry charge. At least 500 soldiers, Webb's remaining ammunition, 30 rounds for the M60s, maybe 10 rounds per rifle, 2 grenades, 0 mortar rounds. "This is it," Mike said. "We can't bluff our way through this." Webb looked at the charging enemy, at his exhausted men, at the firebase they'd held for 3 days. "No," Webb said, "but we can make them think we can." He grabbed the radio. "All stations, weapons free, engage at will." His men opened fire. 30 rounds from the M60s, controlled bursts, precise, deadly. Enemy soldiers dropped. The rifles fired. 10 rounds each, aimed shots. No spray and pray. More enemy soldiers fell. Then Webb did something crazy. He detonated the last 2 Claymore mines, except they weren't armed Claymore mines. They were fake, empty casings packed with dirt and firecrackers. They went off with a bang, lots of smoke, no shrapnel. But the NVA didn't know that. The explosion stopped the assault, just for a moment. Webb's men kept firing. Every shot counted. Every shot mattered. The NVA pushed forward again. Webb's machine guns went silent. Out of ammo, the rifles clicked empty. One by one, they were done. No more bullets, no more grenades, no more tricks. Webb grabbed his empty M16, fixed his bayonet. "Fix bayonets!" he yelled. His men looked at him. Then, one by one, they fixed bayonets. 50 men, empty rifles, blades attached. They stood on the Firebase walls, ready to fight hand to hand. The NVA saw them, saw the bayonets, saw the determination. And something happened that Webb never expected. The enemy stopped. For 10 seconds, nobody moved. The NVA infantry stood in the open, 200 yards from the Firebase. Webb's men stood on the walls, bayonets fixed, both sides staring at each other. Then an NVA officer shouted something. His troops hesitated. Webb didn't speak Vietnamese, but he understood the body language. The officer was telling his men to hold position. "Why aren't they attacking?" Mike whispered. "Because they think we still have ammo," Webb said. "They think we're baiting them into a trap. We are out of ammo." "I know, but they don't." The NVA officer shouted again. His troops started backing up, slowly, carefully, not running, not fleeing, just withdrawing. "They're leaving," Dave said, disbelief in his voice. "Don't move," Webb said. "Don't give them a reason to change their minds." The NVA pulled back into the tree line. Within 5 minutes, they were gone. Firebase Delta was silent. Webb lowered his empty rifle. "Did we just win?" "I don't know," Mike said. "Did we?" The radio crackled. "Delta Actual, this is Falcon 2-1. We have blue skies and we are inbound with resupply. ETA 15 minutes. Webb closed his eyes. "Copy, Falcon 2-1. LZ is clear. We'll be ready." He looked at his men, exhausted, filthy, but alive. "We held," he said quietly. "We held," Mike repeated, "with no ammo." They didn't need to know that. 15 minutes later, 2 Hueys landed. Crates of ammunition, food, water, medical supplies. A colonel stepped off the second Huey, looked around, saw the damage, the empty shell casings, the defensive positions. "Lieutenant Webb?" the colonel said. "Yes, sir." "I've been reading your radio reports. 3 days under siege, critically low on ammunition. How the hell did you hold this position?" Webb looked at the tree line, at the spot where the NVA had stood, where they'd hesitated, where they'd retreated. "We made them think we had more than we did, sir." The colonel frowned. "Explain." "We bluffed them, sir. Made them believe we were stronger than we were, and they believed us." The colonel stared at him. "You held a fire base with no ammunition?" "For the last 6 hours, yes, sir." "That's impossible." "Apparently not, sir." The colonel shook his head, smiled. "Son, that's either the bravest or the stupidest thing I've ever heard." "Permission to speak freely, sir?" "Granted." It was both. Firebase Delta was reinforced. 2 companies, heavy weapons, artillery support. The NVA never attacked again. Webb and his men rotated out 2 days later, alive, uninjured, victorious. At the debriefing, intelligence officers had questions. "We've been monitoring enemy communications," one said. "We intercepted NVA radio traffic during the siege. Do you want to know what they were saying?" "Yes," Webb said. The officer slid a translated transcript across the table. Webb read it. NVA Field Commander to HQ. "American Firebase is well defended. Heavy weapons. Multiple reinforcements observed. Recommend we withdraw and seek easier target." NVA HQ response. "Confirmed. Break off attack. Firebase Delta too heavily fortified." Webb looked up. They thought we were heavily fortified? Yes, the officer said. Your deception operation worked perfectly. They never knew you were out of ammunition. What would have happened if they'd kept attacking? The officer met his eyes. You would have lost. Badly. You were outnumbered 10-1 with no ammo. There's no scenario where you hold that position. But we did hold it. Because they didn't know the truth. You convinced them you were stronger than you were. And in warfare, sometimes perception is more powerful than reality. Webb leaned back in his chair, thought about the empty rifles, the fake radio calls, the helmets on sticks. We got lucky, he said. Luck had nothing to do with it, the officer said. You outthought them, outplayed them. That's not luck, that's leadership. Marcus Webb retired from the Army in 1985, moved back to Montana, became a high school history teacher. He didn't talk about Vietnam much, didn't need to, but every Veterans Day, students would ask him questions. Mr. Webb, what's the bravest thing you ever did in the war? And Webb would think about Firebase Delta, about the empty rifles, the fake smoke, the bayonets fixed for a fight that never came. I once convinced an enemy that we were stronger than we were, he'd say, and they believed me. That's it? Sometimes, Webb would say, the bravest thing you can do is bet everything on a lie and pray they don't call your bluff. In 2001, Webb was invited to a military symposium on psychological warfare. They wanted him to speak, to explain how he'd held Firebase Delta. He stood at the podium, looked at the audience, officers, analysts, strategists. You want to know the secret? Webb said. There is no secret. We were out of options, out of ammunition, out of time. So we did the only thing we could. Which was? Someone asked. We acted like we'd already won, and we convinced them it was true. He paused. In war, fear is a weapon, and sometimes the enemy's fear of what you might do is more powerful than what you can actually do. What if they'd figured out you were bluffing? Another voice asked. Webb smiled. Then I wouldn't be standing here. The audience laughed, nervously, because they all knew the truth. Webb and his 50 men had gambled their lives on a bluff, and somehow, impossibly, they'd won. Firebase Delta was abandoned in 1971. The war moved on. The jungle reclaimed it. But the story survived. In military academies, they teach it as a case study, the Firebase Delta deception. How psychological warfare can overcome material disadvantage. In 2015, Marcus Webb returned to Vietnam, tourist trip, closure. He hiked to where Firebase Delta used to be, nothing left. Just overgrown jungle, crumbling sandbags, rusted wire. But standing there, he could still see it. The walls, the bunkers, the empty rifles pointed at the tree line. A Vietnamese guide approached him, elderly man, friendly. You are American veteran? The man asked in broken English. Yes, Webb said. You fight here? Long time ago, yes. The man nodded slowly. I fight here too. Other side. Webb tensed. You were NVA? Yes, I was soldier. We attacked this place many times. Why did you stop? Webb asked. The old man smiled. We thought you too strong, too many soldiers, too much weapon. We decide not to die for this hill. Webb almost laughed, almost told him the truth, but he didn't. We were strong, Webb said. You made the right choice. The old man nodded. War is strange. Sometimes the winner is the one who thinks he will lose. He walked away. Webb stood alone at Firebase Delta, or what was left of it. We were out of ammo, he whispered to the jungle. And you never knew. The jungle didn't answer, but somewhere, in the silence, Webb could swear he heard the click of an empty rifle, the sound of a bluff that saved 50 lives. On his gravestone, when he passed in 2018, they inscribed one line: "He won a battle with no bullets and never fired the last shot." If this story moved you, if it made you think about courage, deception, and the battles won without firing a shot, hit that like button. These stories deserve to be told. These soldiers deserve to be remembered. Subscribe for more untold stories from Vietnam, the fire bases, the bluffs, the victories no one saw coming.